Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And I'm continuing my series on favorite movie for every year that I was born. Kind of came up with this idea from Elliot from IMO Reviews, who did this on his channel at some point. And I love the concept going to each year that I was alive and trying to research what are my favorite movies of that year and try to come up with a with what is my favorite movie that year. Some years it's a little bit harder than others. Some years I had a hard time really finding a good movie, surprisingly. Other years there's like a bunch of movies I really love that I had to really think about. Anyway, so now I did the 80s. I was born in 83, so I did 83 to 89. And so now I'm going to cover 90 to 99, that decade, which was a really good decade for movies as I've looked through these. So first we're going to start with 1990. My One of my favorite trilogies. I already talked about the first movie, but this is actually the third movie, and this is my trilogy DVD Blu-ray. But Back to the Future Part 3, you get that, came out in 1990. Third of only 3 movies that they made of that franchise or trilogy. Might be surprising that I put that there. It's not considered, by many as maybe a great movie, or it's not even considered the strongest movie, obviously, of that trilogy, maybe even the weakest of that trilogy. But I love that whole series so much. I did reviews on all 3 movies already, and I gave them all really high scores, with Back to the Future being one of my favorite movies of all time. Third movie, it's a little bit different. The other 2 movies deals more with time traveling through, seeing their parents or seeing them in the future. This one goes all the way back in the past to the Wild West, 1885, I think. And when, what's it called, the town, Hill Valley or whatever, is still just being built, basically. And it's the beginnings of that town, basically. But Martin McFly goes back into the Wild West to save Doc, who's in danger anyways. And so then the whole movie takes place in the Wild West, which is much different than the other Back to the Futures, but it still has that great comedy, great chemistry between Martin McFly and Doc. I love those two together. And I love the whole Wild West feel of the movie too. As a not a huge Western fan, but I like a good Western every once in a while. And I think it's actually a pretty good Western overall, the shootouts. And I think Biff is great grandfather, whatever, great grandfather. Mad Dog, Tanner, is a great bad guy character, kind of comically bad guy character. And the actor that played that role does such a great job playing the bad guy there. And so overall, still love this movie. It's a third one, but still a great one. From 1990, Back to the Future 3. 1991, now this is probably the one you're going to really question me about the most, because it's a very kind of left field choice. But I looked at 1991 and I found like I had a hard time finding a really good movie from that year, I can't remember what the classics are from that year. I think I was, oh no, I know. Well, I know. I was thinking, and that's what goes to where when I think about movies I like to watch over again, there's definitely one of the big classics of that year was Silence of the Lambs, which I think most people probably put that maybe their favorite movie of the year. And it was a movie I actually was considering, because I like the movie overall. Performances are great. Best Picture winner that year. But it is a kind of dark, kind of gross movie. It's about serial killers and about making a bodysuit out of skin. So it's a very dark movie that I don't like to go back and watch. And it's not one I don't think I'm ever going to own myself. It's not one I want to really relive that much. So I kind of thought about it, but then I kind of put it away. The other big movie I think I thought about was Terminator 2, Judgment Day. I consider that. I like Terminator. I'm not a huge fan of the Terminator movies, but, they're decent sci-fi action movies. Many consider Terminator 2 to be like the greatest action movie of all time. And I don't blame anybody for saying that. It definitely has some great groundbreaking action and CGI work anyway. So, but I'm not totally in love with that movie. So I kind of thought about it, but Anyways, I'm delaying, but I went with more nostalgia factor. Turtles 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 2, The Secret of the Ooze, the sequel to the first movie, of course. Sorry. Yeah, and this again, I was a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan as a kid, and here in 1991, I'm about 8 years old, so I was right in that age range where Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was like my favorite thing. I think I had a watch. I dressed as Michelangelo during Halloween. I had all kinds of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, video games, like I said, the movies, the TV show. I was just obsessed with comic books, anything with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was one of my favorite things as a kid, and I loved the movies as well. At least the first two. I'm third one maybe not as much, but first two I really have a lot of nostalgia from when I saw those. I just thought they were great, and even rewatching them, I rewatched this one not that long ago in the last year, and it still was such an enjoyable movie to watch. Again, it's not your you know Citizen Kane type movie. It's just a kind of a silly action comedy with uh, guys dressed in these these turtle suits, but it's done pretty well. I actually kind of enjoy it better than the CGI in other movies, but I like the live action suits and everything. But it's really funny. The characters, I love their teenage attitudes and uh, all that, and the way they work together. And yeah, and I think all the special effects still work well because they're not CGI and all that. And yeah, just a good time. I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze is my favorite movie of 1991. 1992 is one I don't own, and 92 is a pretty good year. Um, if I remember right, I was considering a couple movies. Um, Not forgetting what it was, but uh, ultimately went with Few Good Men. Sorry, it's one I don't own currently, but Few Good Men I picked for favorite movie in 1992. I love a good courtroom drama, and this is one of the best courtroom dramas. Tom Cruise is really great, charismatic, funny. Some really great performances. Between him, Kevin Bacon, and the scene stealing Jack Nicholson, who gave one of my favorite performances as the real biggest jerk that you can ever have, getting on the stand. And I think he should have won an Oscar for that role, Best Supporting Actor, that he was nominated. But I think he's not in it a lot, but man, when he's in it, you can't help but be glued to the screen when Jack Nicholson's there. Uh, Plays that perfectly. And Tom Cruise goes toe to toe with him there at the end. I love that last scene, of course, has the big famous, "You can't handle the truth." One of the most famous lines of all time that gets overdone but nowadays. But I love that whole sequence between them two. And Jack Nicholson's whole rant afterwards is just so great and just so fun to watch. And it's just almost a perfect movie, and script wise, it's such a great script. Dialogue, the back and forth are so great, and the mystery of it, and how is he going to get him, how is he going to defend these two people, and how is he going to get Jack Nicholson to admit to the code red. That's all just very interesting uh, mentally, and what goes there. And yeah, it's just a movie I can watch over and over again and just love the acting and the storytelling of that movie. So that's my favorite movie, 1992. 1993, was a hard one to pick because I love Jurassic Park, came out this year. Groundbreaking movie. I love that movie. Such a huge part of my childhood. Also love Lion King, another movie I saw, I remember that year. One of my favorite anime movies of all time. And so the pick I went with, it's really, I could be either of these three, but I ultimately went with Groundhog Day with Bill Murray there and Andy McDowell. Kind of a comedy with a little drama too in it, but probably considered comedy of that era. But yeah, one that I just absolutely love. And last time I saw it, I get so involved in it. It has one of the best concepts I think ever in a movie, that you're repeating the same day over and over again. And we've seen other, I think, movies and TV shows do this. And I always love it when they do that. It's always an interesting concept of what do you do if you can live the same day over and over again? How does that change your choices in life and what you would do differently, you know? And this does such a good job of looking at that aspect. And I love the arc of the character, and I love kind of the redemption of the main character, Bill Murray's character, Phil, who is kind of a selfish jerk at the beginning of the movie. And then when he finds out that he's living the same day over again, he first uses it to his selfish advantage to get what he wants, and manipulate people and so forth. And then he gets kind of tired of that. And then he goes through this grieving phase where he kind of sees it more as a curse that he has to live the same day over again. And then he gets suicidal where he's trying to kill himself, but he keeps, even if he kills himself, he keeps living the same day again. And he just doesn't know what to do. And then finally at the end, he gets the idea of like, what if I use this time to actually help people and be a good person? And he comes totally full circle and becomes this very selfless person who seeks ways to help everybody and also to better himself, becomes an expert piano player and all these other things. So I love that, how that character arc kind of goes from there to there. And he comes from, and the funny thing about Bill Murray, such a great performance by him. Even when he's a selfish jerk, he's still likable. And like, I think only Bill Murray is one of those few actors that can play kind of a selfish jerk character and still be likable and still be somebody that you like to see. And just fun that he goes from that to where he goes and he becomes the quite opposite of what he is at the beginning. But through the whole thing, Bill Murray's so great. He's funny, but not overly over the top funny, and the serious moments really hit too. So yeah, it's one of my favorite comedies, Groundhog Day. 1994, I think this is the year most people would probably put Pulp Fiction. I believe that came out in 1994. I think even Elliot had Pulp Fiction as his favorite movie. Most people would have that their favorite movie. It's not on my list of favorite movies, and I would say what's the word? Admire the movie and what it does and what Tarantino does, and it's very original and fresh, and the way that the whole movie's shot out of order, or you see the whole thing go back, flash back and forth out of order, the events, I think is very interesting and intriguing, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and the performances are pretty good, especially Samuel Jackson. Ultimately, it's a pretty dark movie. It has, at the time, I think it broke the record for most F words in the movie. So just lots of cursing, lots of bloody violence, drugs, and there's some pretty gross moments in there that I just don't like to go back and watch that movie over again. But yet I can kind of admire it from distance and say, I understand why people like it. But my favorite movie of the year, and one of my favorite movies of all time, to be honest, is Forrest Gump. Best Picture winner there, Best Actor, Tom Hanks, Robert Zemeckis directing, and big movie, big box office hit. I saw it in the theater, actually. I was only like 11 years old, and I thought it was great back then. And more times I watch it, the more I love it. It seems to grow more and more as one of my favorite movies. Tom Hanks gives, I think, the best performance of his lifetime. Totally immerses himself into the Forrest Gump character, where I forget it's Tom Hanks. Like, it's one of those movies I'm like, oh yeah, that's Tom Hanks. It's like, it just felt like it was Forrest Gump. And I love the aspect of him going through time and seeing the major events, like Vietnam, and he meets, John F. Kennedy, meets John Lennon, meets Richard Nixon, the whole Watergate thing. And so I love that whole aspect. It goes through Vietnam War. And so all that. And ultimately, it's a great love story between Forrest and Jenny, as I like to call her. I love that even when they're apart, Forrest Gump always thinks about her, and he's so nice to her, even when she doesn't deserve it. And yet somehow they always come back together. They go apart, but something always brings them back together. And I love that fact that throughout the movie, they keep getting together again until the very end, they finally get together for good. Spoilers for the movie. But yeah, so I love that whole relationship aspect. And Forrest Gump, I just love how he's just so nice to everybody. And everybody makes fun of him, is mean to him, but he always stays the same and doesn't change. And he's a very likable character that just tries his hardest. Anything you want him to do, he does his best. and tries his hardest, and just never is mean to anybody, even when they deserve it. So I just love the character overall. Love Tom Hanks' performance. Uh, Great script, great cinematography. It's just one of the best. So many iconic lines. Stupid is, stupid does. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Run, Forrest, run. Just so many great scenes and iconic scenes that I just love so much. And like I said, it's very emotional at times. It's very funny at times. Hits you in every single emotion that you can have. So that's best film in my favorite movie, 1994, Forrest Gump. 1995, I consider the best year in movies. That's my opinion. Just name some movies that didn't make my favorite movie list that I absolutely love, or like, some of my favorite movies. Braveheart, which won Best Picture that year. Apollo 13, one of my favorite movies of all time. Uh, Toy Story, groundbreaking, computer graphics, uh, you know, Pixar starting, totally changed animation. Tommy Boy, one of my favorite comedies, came out that year. But the movie I went with is Mr. Holland's Opus, with Richard Dreyfuss there as the lead, as Mr. Holland. It's always been one of my favorite movies. Very inspiring, very feel-good movie, I guess. Very inspirational, about a guy who doesn't want to be a teacher, but needs a job, needs a musician, he needs uh, a steady job. So he reluctantly like goes in, becomes a teacher. Really just wants to write music. Doesn't really care about the teaching. But then, of course, throughout the course of the movie, he loves teaching, and he's using his teaching to help students. Really wants to help them in their future, and just not to listen to music, but to use it for life lessons. And so that's why it's kind of inspiring to the kids. They all go on and do better things because of his impact on their lives. And it makes me think of my own teachers I had in my life that made impacts on my life. I think we all had that one teacher or two that were special and really helped you during, what is a crazy time in your life when you're a teenager. You look back and you're like, how did I get through my teenage years? Uh, Anyways, and I love that the movie it goes from 1965 to 1995. So you see how the culture changes and how, teenagers change through those 30 years. And the music is so great. It's very funny at times, very dramatic at times. It's just amazing moments. Him singing "Beautiful Boy" to his son, such an emotional moment. I always love that scene. And the very last scene is one of the best endings ever in a movie, where he totally gets vindicated that his life was not a waste, that he served the people better as a teacher than he would have as a famous musician. And he sees that at the end anyway. So definitely it's a good movie. If you like a feel-good, inspirational movie, I recommend Mr. Holland's Opus. Best movie of 1995. All right, go to 1996. And so I talked about Star Trek before, and I got Star Trek again. Favorite movie 1996, Star Trek First Contact. I did a video, I think, ranking all the Star Trek movies. I watched all the Star Trek movies recently. And I put Star Trek First Contact, number one on my list. And number two was The Voyage Home, which I had as my favorite movie, I believe, of 1986 maybe, somewhere in there. And so here's another Star Trek movie that made my best of year. And so again, I watched this not too long ago, and it still holds up to me. And I'm a big fan of Next Generation. That was like my Star Trek as a kid. I watched the original series, but obviously those were reruns from a long time ago, from the late 60s. And so, but in the early 90s, Star Trek Next Generation was going on. So I remember looking so much forward to watching whatever night that was. My whole family would get together and we'd eat supper and we would watch Star Trek. And I loved that show and just looked forward to every episode. And so happy when they started making movies. I think this one's by far the best of the Next Generation crew. And I really love the Next Generation crew. I mean, Data, Worf, Captain Picard, Riker. Love that whole group together, what they do. And what I love about this movie is it has the best, I think, bad guys. The Borg. The Borg is one of the best bad guys invented by Star Trek. This really scary, half human, half robot. The collective group that they look scary, and they're just one of the best bad guys ever in TV. And it's so great that they finally put him on a movie. And a lot of the other Star Treks have weak villains, I think, and this villain definitely tops it. Yeah, and they're very scary at times. I remember being very scared when I saw this in the theater when I was like 13 or so. There's almost a horror aspect to it. It's interesting. But what I love about this movie is it looks so great. Even now, watching it again, it still holds up. The special effects, the makeup work is really, really good. The costume is really good. Cinematography is really good. And storytelling is really, really good. Everything's just like at the best. Like they did everything at the best for this movie. And that's why it's my favorite Star Trek movie and favorite movie this year. And I like time travel, as you can see from, I like some time travel movies. And this has a time travel aspect, as Voyage Home did too, where they kind of go in the past, and it kind of deals with meeting your heroes. You don't want to meet your heroes because they're not as good as what the textbooks say. And so that was kind of interesting aspect too, that they meet this guy, Cochrane, who they all kind of worship almost. And he turns out to not to be really up to the ideals that they have. So I love that whole story aspect of it as well. Anyways, and it's got a great, they have to stop the Borg, or they're gonna, uh, assimilate everybody into the Borg. So the stakes can't be higher. And also Picard, Patrick Stewart gets a great performance. Picard has his history at the Borg, so that plays into it. Anyway, so yeah, I think even if you're not a Star Trek fan, I think it's a really good sci-fi action movie, I would say. And it's not a lot of humor, a little humor thrown in there, I think at times. That helps a lot. Anyway, so going from that was 1996. 1997, another sci-fi action movie. You can probably tell I do like sci-fi action in my movies, and this one is Men in Black. Might be surprising. My favorite movie of it's another one where I was looking at the movies, and I was having a hard time finding a really good movie, and then I saw this one came out in 1997. I was like, oh yeah, this is I think still a really good movie. Of course, you got Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones as kind of the two leads. Will Smith coming off Independence Day, he's like at the height of his stardom. I mean, he's like one of the biggest actors in Hollywood at this time. Tommy Lee Jones, of course, great veteran actor. And they work really well together because Tommy Lee Jones is that really stone-faced, serious guy. And Will Smith is kind of more of the comic relief guy. And so they work really well together because they're kind of opposites in that way. One's a little bit older and one's younger. And it's such a great concept, I think. I love the whole concept of there's aliens on Earth, but we don't know about it because they're kind of in disguise. And there's aliens that try to destroy the Earth, but we never know it because there's this group called the Men in Black, and they're like the secret government agency that protects us from aliens, but we don't know that that's happening. And so I just love that whole aspect, and like his eyes get open and he realizes there's aliens all over the place, and you deal with that. And the technology is great, the guns that he gets to use, and the cars, and of course one of the best iconic objects we've gotten from that is the thing that you put in their eyes, and you put sunglasses on so it doesn't erase your memory, but you can erase their memory with this little red thing, and then give them a whole different story, and they forget what happened. That was great, and that seems like that's something you see a lot of memes and lots of other parodies, the whole mind racing thing. But it was a great idea because you can do a lot with that, especially when you're trying to get people to forget that they're aliens. You're trying to keep that a secret. And I don't know, it's got some comedy, got some great action in it. Still a really fun movie, I think. Still holds up to me. Men in Black from 1997. All right, 1998. It's kind of interesting movie. It's the only foreign film I have on my list, and it's the only foreign film that I own. It's by far my favorite foreign film. Absolutely love it, and that is Life is Beautiful from Italy, directed, I think written by Roberto Benigni there as the lead. Guido, I believe his name is. It's such a interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, it's it's the one of a kind movie. I mean, how do you make a romantic comedy and also deal with the Holocaust in the same movie? Those two things do not fit. That should not work. But for me, it works so well. Um, I would say the first half of the movie is a romantic comedy where Roberto Benigni is trying to sees this girl and falls in love with her, kind of love at first sight, and she's engaged with someone else, but he won't stop pursuing her and trying to get her to fall in love with him. And that whole story is just so wonderfully done. It's so funny, romantic. Roberto Benigni is so great in the role. He won Best Actor for this movie. And he's such an interesting actor. He's very physical, kind of calm. He has like a physical comedy about him that I really love. But does a good performance overall. But you just can't keep your eyes off him when he's on the film. I mean, he's so great. Musical score is so beautiful. Just love the musical score. And you got what's it? He says "Good morning, Principesse," which is princess. Love that line. I'm forgetting how it goes now, but that's a great line. And then the second half deals with the Holocaust, where him and his son and even his wife are in the Holocaust, are in a concentration camp because they're Jewish, and they're seeing the horrors. Kind of, it's not Schindler's List level of horror, but you're seeing some horror in there, and yet somehow they fit in comedy. Which, like, how do you fit comedy in a concentration camp? But somehow he figures a way to fit comedy in, and it fits in. It's not. I don't think some might say this, but I don't think it's in bad taste towards the Holocaust. Obviously, it's a very one of the most horrible things that's ever happened in human history. It's a very serious subject matter, but I guess I don't think it's trying to make fun of the Holocaust or anything. It's still giving respect to what happened there and the horrors. And overall, he's very selfless and sacrifices. He's willing to sacrifice his life for his family, which is very noble. And some bad things do happen, so they don't go away from that. But yet, I don't know how they be able to fit those in, but somehow they fits it in, and it works so great. I'm a bigger fan of the first half. The romantic comedy part to me is the best part of the movie. They could have done without. And to be honest, if they would have taken out the whole Holocaust part of the movie, to me it would still be one of my favorite movies. Just because the way that whole works out, and the script is just brilliantly written. I think just one of the best. I think definitely if you don't watch foreign films, definitely you have to check that one out. Life is Beautiful from 1998. And it's funny, if you look up Life is Beautiful, it'll say it came out in 1997 because I was looking it up, and it's in 1997. So I put it down as my favorite movie in 1997. But then when I thought about it, I was like, oh, it can't be, because I know Roberto Benigni wins Best Actor for that movie. And I also know that Jack Nicholson wins Best Actor for As Good as It Gets, which also came out in 1997. So I was like, something's wrong there because they both can't win Best Actor in the same year. And so I was like, and I looked it up, and like, I swear, like, yeah, Roberto Benigni won Best Actor for 1998. So I don't know how this came in 1997, but all the Oscar wins were 1998. So I'm putting it as a 1998 movie. My guess is that maybe it came out in Italy in 1997, but it didn't come to the States until 98 is my guess. So that's why I have it there, 98. All right, last movie today I'm going to talk about, and to finish out the 90s, favorite movie 1999. The only animated movie I have on this list, though, I love animated movies. Like I said, the Lion King was a consideration for 93. Toy Story was definitely a consideration for 95. I would even say Aladdin maybe was a consideration for 92. But for 99, the movie I thought was my favorite was Toy Story 2, the sequel to Toy Story. Love the Toy Story franchise in a whole. Definitely one of the great, I think, franchises since there's 4 movies. Have all 4 on Blu-ray. Love watching them. Toy Story 2 is probably my second favorite out of the 4, I would say. Just slightly above Toy Story. They're both really good. Toy Story 2 is just a little bit better, has a little more moments that are really funny. I just love the whole concept of, again, one of the best concepts in animation. Toys, what if they were alive and they had their own like society when we're not around? And I love how they kind of have this whole community, and they have meetings and all this stuff. And Woody's like the leader, and so on moving day they have to figure out how we're gonna have a moving partner and how kind of the logistics of it all and kind of planning stuff. So I love that toys are like doing that. It's such a great concept. And this has a great story of, does, do you stay with your, there's this whole thing where they love their human owner, Andy, and they get joy out of making him happy, basically. That's kind of how the premise is. And so there's this whole thing about Andy gets older, though. At some point, Andy's not going to play with toys. And so then you're just going to sit there and not have anything to do, and what kind of life is that for a toy, So it kind of goes to these concepts of immortality, basically. And of course, this whole idea that Woody might be in a museum where people get to look at him, and is that better than spending the rest of his time with Andy until he, and deals with, some toys are, become bad or bitter because their owners, threw them away or lost them or, got old and just didn't play with them anymore. And I love the whole concept of, that they get bitter and angry and sad, because they don't have that interaction with the humans anymore. And so it deals with a lot of that kind of interesting subject matter for the toys. I think is really a great idea from the first one. It adds some really great characters to the movie. And I love Buzz Lightyear and Zorg is his father. They do the whole Darth Vader scene. It's so funny. And you meet Barbie and meet all kinds of toys at the toy barn, Al's Toy Barn. And then it has a really great emotional moment with I forget her name now, but the other cowgirl, and it's Sarah McLachlan singing, When You Loved Me, I think the name of the song is. Just a really sad, beautiful song that really hits you emotionally of, what it's like for a toy to, be discarded. Anyway, so it has just really great moments like that that you don't see in a lot of other, I think, Pixar movies even. Anyway, so yeah, just can't say enough. It's one of my favorite animated movies, and Pixar was doing really great stuff at that point. Every movie was like knocking it out of the park. Anyway, so I had to give some love there to Toy Story and to animated movies, and that's why Toy Story 2 is my favorite movie in 1999. So that's my list from 90 to 99. So love to hear your comments, what your favorite movies of those years were. What did I miss? Where am I wrong? Or what movies are your favorite movies that I mentioned? Feel free to comment. Love to read the comments and all of that. Anyways, and just thank you for watching this video and for liking it. And just thank you to all the subscribers for supporting the channel. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a good day.